Hello, my name is Matthew, and I finished reading Brideshead Revisited by Evelyn Waugh. This is part of my read along buddy read with Steve Donahue and a few other people that have been uh, reading along with us, and I've finished the book. Um, if you've been watching my videos, I've given the impression of constantly being confused and befuddled and not really understanding what I'm reading, as if I'm totally at a loss. And there have been moments while reading through the novel where I've had bits of confusion. I should say the larger issue that I was uh, dealing with was actually just making the videos and trying to make sense of what I've read, and try to talk about or convey what I think about the book without knowing it as a whole. And this is a book that changes direction throughout the story. We focus on certain characters and move along. New characters come up that become prominent in the story. The tone fluctuates. So as you're reading it, especially the beginning where it's tough to just gain traction, and the first great episode was Charles and his father at the dining room table, and it's comedic. It's uh, dark and awkward and tense, mostly comedic, but it's not a funny novel. So you'll have parts where it's extremely funny, and I'll think maybe as we carry on, I'm reading a social satire. The beginning of the book is light and lyrical and beautiful, and there's moments that just feel idyllic, and that tone changes into something much more stern, severe, pessimistic. The language becomes harsh, and as I'm reading it and trying to understand, well, um, how does it all come together? Is it a beautiful light book? And I was misreading portions of the second half. Is it all completely stern and cynical? And maybe I misread the beginning of it. Characters appear without very much, without introduction, and like I said, uh, become extremely prominent very quickly. And you have this feeling of, well, I don't even know who you are, and now you're talking and doing things, um, which can be jarring. As I've been reading through the book, um, each of these characters that come along without much introduction all have these emotionally charged or very memorable scenes that very quickly or cumulatively, as you're making your way through the book, they become um, very real, fleshed out characters, even if you're only getting glimpses or moments of them, or very specific versions of how someone acts in a certain situation. Um, Now, all of those things, being confused, having multiple tones, having kind of a fluctuating uh, language of the book, lots of dynamic characters, having sort of an old-fashioned novel told with a very modern, daring treatment. All of those things add up to the kind of book that typically I love and often revisit and reread, and I typically place very highly. So authors that I like, Flaubert or Dostoevsky or Thomas Mann, some of the greatest kinds of writers have all of these things. There's no Dostoevsky novel that's strictly, well, he doesn't have any comedic, but none of his books are strictly tragic or strictly a mystery or strictly religious. It's a whole wealth of human emotions that all play off of each other throughout the story. I feel like that's what's happening in this book. I'm really looking forward to either rereading this book or just reading other things by Evelyn Waugh at some point. Not so much to gain a better understanding of the story. Now that I know it as a whole, I can see how parts add up together. All of these incidents that Charles is basically witnessing. The name of the book is Brideshead Revisited, and it has a subtitle, The Sacred and Profane Memories of Captain Charles Ryder. And at the end of the book, when we have the family of the Brideshead house and the father who has come back and is just dying, he's on his deathbed, and we have this whole cast of characters, all the family members that we've learned about and had experiences with throughout the book. They are, in varying degrees, they're outside of the father's deathbed with this priest, and they want to have the last rites. The father isn't a Catholic. He moved to Venice and spent decades of his life outside of Catholicism, and now the family, with his dying breath, basically want him to come back into the Catholic faith for different reasons. Is it to return some of the social standing of the family? Is it because they're really concerned that he's going to go to hell? They want him to go to heaven. And we've had tragedy running through tragedy and misfortune and pitfalls with these different characters, and it all kind of adds up to this like moment of revelation. The father, at first, the priest comes in, and he's well enough to just throw him back out the door. And when he truly is just on his last dying breath, he makes a pitiful gesture. I think there's some question as to if he was finally his faith returned, or if it was just something else altogether. And then I think about the book as a whole and all of the things that have happened, and a book that is the memories of this character Charles, that treats Charles as if he's a side character. All of the memories are about this family, and with all of the different relationships that he's had with this family, we can see him have varying attempts to have different kinds of lives, to have lives that are what he thinks are going to be better than the life that he was having. We have either young love with Sebastian, or maybe just a lifelong best friend that goes disastrously. It just is a disappointment. We have him with Charles being brought into the Brideshead, the family of the Brideshead Manor, and he can see this crack of the door. He can get his foot in the door to a higher social sphere. Maybe he can become part of these upper classes, potentially aristocracy or nobility, very, the wealthy, the extremely rich. And through his choices, and also Sebastian's pressuring, but the matriarch of that family throws him out. We have him become, Charles becoming moderately or fairly successful as an artist. He is matured. He's turned into his father, essentially, being absent with his new family. He marries somebody else who's absent in his life and not very present in the novel, has children, and he leaves them. He decides that he's in love with Julia, and that falls through. We have all of these attempts of somebody wanting a certain kind of life, and that whole life is fading away with or without Charles, because the world is changing. There's part of his success as an artist was the decline of this long period of English nobility. People are asking him to paint the houses that are going to be abandoned or foreclosed or destroyed. And all of this book, all these different things that are happening, possibilities of, in his mind, maybe a better, brighter future, it's all couched in the prologue and epilogue of the main story, which is Charles is in an army regiment, going through these kind of dull routines. He's not a hero. He's just one among many, one among the countless, the forgettable. I think about those old-fashioned novels, 19th century, 20th century English or French or Russian, American, all the great novels that you think of as those kind of classics. You'll have an author say, like, this is our hero. And here we have a soldier. We're told it's Captain Charles Ryder. And there's a much more modern perspective put on this. It reminds me at the end of The Magic Mountain with Hans Castorp leaving the sanitarium, distinctly given the impression that he's just going to go off to war and die as a nobody. Here we have Charles thinking about having his own memories, and he's barely a part of them. He's not an active. He's not a hero in his own mind, let alone the larger world, the world around him. And those are most of my thoughts about the book. I feel like um, there were a lot of risks. There's a lot of choices that I'm not entirely sure add up to the benefit of the whole. The treatment of memory in the way that the story is told. I'm not sure if it really um, added an extra punch into the story or character development or psychological depth or insight. Um, but each character um, has a set piece scene that is emotionally moving. The ending with Charles and Julia um, deciding that they are not going to be together. The deathbed scene and the dialogue. One of the things I'd be interested in reading this whole thing over again um, is the brilliance of the dialogue. My initial reactions throughout the book was the brilliance of the descriptive prose. As it goes along, we get these philosophical or theological or familial family relation um, conversations, these dialogues that um, feel masterful. It's easy to see that there's a lot of things happening in this family dynamic that can be a rich source to go back to. How exactly all the family members are playing off of one another. I think, and I'll just say, one of my favorite little moments that I laughed at, a good chuckle was it the older it was Brideshead, and now he's getting married to someone that everyone's kind of disappointed with, an older woman by their standards, and now I can't remember, but they ask like what she does or how they met, and he mentions that she either like collects matchboxes or her family sells matchboxes, and one of the family members goes, "So are you marrying her for her matchboxes?" And there's moments like that where it's emotionally charged. It's funny, but to have a family member jab you and to think like how many how much how pregnant is that statement. um, this is one example of like how great the dialogue is. um, I know that I probably presented this whole read along as being much more challenging, a much more challenging read um, than it probably really is. Um, but um, it's much easier to talk about a book as a whole. I've been fairly vague with some of the things that I've said, especially like parts that happened earlier on in the book, because I've talked at length and kind of wanted to talk about larger themes that um, had been on my mind throughout the book. I just wanted to have a better understanding of how all the pieces fit together. So it was an enjoyable read. The read along, watching Steve's videos and Sean D. Standfast videos have been fun and incredibly helpful, insightful, bringing to life some of the moments that I was curious about, or Steve and Sean articulating um, larger themes of the book that were happening early on. Just amazing. So those are some of my thoughts on um, the ending of Brideshead Revisited and the book as a whole. Let me know what you think, if you've read it before, or if you've been reading along with us. I hope all of this has been fun. We have another read along coming up in May, so I'm very excited about that as well. And thank you for watching. Leave a comment if you would like, and take care.